Hello everyone and welcome to a Static Grass Creation Studio update. Today we have a personal army of mine that I started a couple years ago at one of the Adepticons. This is a Parabellum Wargames Conquest Last Argument of Kings. It's a relatively new rank and flank game that uses alternative actions, cards, scales, a bit bigger than Games Workshop. It's like 32mm or higher or something like that. Right here in front of me is the 100 Kingdoms, the human faction. There's also the Spire, gribbly elves, quote unquote. There's orcs that ride dinosaurs and crazy war dwarves. And the Norse. Right now, here in front of me is the 100 Kingdoms. This is my built force so far. It's not everything. I still have another box of these guys and these guys right here. I have another box of elite infantry as well. And then I've also got a couple more leaders. I'll zoom in on everything as we go along. This isn't how I'm necessarily running the army in the games, but this is how I want to show it off. So if we take a closer look, we'll take a look at the Crossbowmen over here first. As you can see, there's a start of a brick pathway here. I've started to cast all of these myself, actually. This happens to be in clear resin. I've magnetized them and converted them to be a themed army from the bases, at least. The army itself is also themed by color, but we'll go over the color scheme when we get there. As you can see here, there's a bit of an outline for some dirt bed or flower bed. Again, all of this is casted in resin, and this was clear resin. I've used white resin as well, and that's the start of the Crossbowmen. This is how you kind of set up the block of the unit as in-game. So you have however many wide, however many deep, and you get more or less attacks and resolve all of that using d6s. These guys have crossbows, so they happen to have shooting attacks. Over here we have the men-at-arms. Pretty much my line infantry, my basic infantry. There's some infantry that's even more basic, but this game's a little bit different in how you create an army. Each army you have its selection of warbands who are led by your officers, lieutenants, whoever your leaders are. This guy is an officer. There's also mages. Each character, each hero unlocks infantry. They also unlock the elite stuff. They unlock certain things that only that particular hero can take. And those units, they fill out your warband. Those warbands that you select combine into the army. And in this case, these guys right here are the men-at-arms. They're pretty much available under most of the leadership in the 100 Kingdoms, except for very few select ones. And again, I have this brick. It's actually a finished unit that I want. Maybe I'll do one more rank behind them, so I'll have a block of 9. But right now, 6 is like the general repeating pattern that I'm going to have. I do have another pattern of brick tiles that will kind of transition between the flower bed repeats. If I take this out here, if you notice in the back there's a guy missing. He's on loan because my friend wants to 3D print some proxies and he needs the scale correct. So for the original, I did stick on bricks to the base and then molded and casted it. If I can get it to focus. The paint scheme is actually inspired by the old Warhammer Fantasy Knights of the Blazing Sun. It's an old Empire unit. They're like the Knightly Order, one of the Knightly Order cavalry units that had bronze and black armor with black and yellow cloth. So I'm doing that for the entire army. And I was actually lucky enough that the default banner that came in the box was a sun motif. I'm also glad that it came out like that, it fit my theme so well. All the shields are freehand. I should also make a stencil out of it, it would just make my life so much easier. But I freehanded all of the shields. So it turns out that yes, the little outline here is a flower bed. So I do have little grass tufts with flowers or buds on them. Put that back there. Maybe I can give you a bird's eye view here. Looking from above, you can see, hopefully you can see the pattern I'm trying to go for here. So we got brick over on this side that ends into gravel or dirt, and then we have the middle promenade here, the flower bed that spans these tiles right here, so it groups them together and it gives me an idea of what it's supposed to look like if I were to make a display board, which I do plan on doing. Each unit will have its own space for it to go in, and so over here you can see that it ends and there's a little grate or gutter. Probably can't see, but there's water effects here, so what I'm planning on doing actually is if we transition over to the horses. So these guys, I have 5 right now, soon to be 6. That's a decent unit, but one of these guys is actually a noble lord, a warband leader, so I wouldn't necessarily count him as part of the unit, and I would want another box set or a few more horse models to round out the unit to 8 or 9 strong. These guys are an elite fighting unit, so they hit extremely hard. They have a lot of attacks, lots of armor, very hard to kill, and do a lot of killing themselves. If we go back to theme, bronze armor, black cloth, black and yellow cloth, the basing is water effects. This guy happens to have Sir Galahad colors, that's why there's the red and white stripes. If you're familiar with the Knights of the Round Table heraldry, that's his colors. I do plan on doing most of the knights, at least on the cape and shield, so yeah. I did these casted bases so I can actually fit a magnet in there. It's a little bit thicker if I cast them, and there's a little bit more strength behind attaching the magnet, so I can't really use the normal injection molded bases. Whereas this guy isn't casted. This is the original injection mold base. The others I'm magnetizing. They aren't falling out when I put them upside down. Magnets are great. So the idea in the larger scope of the theme, and put it here, it fits here. So these guys are marching down the unfinished brick promenade, trampling the flower bed, and then we have the knights splashing down the creek. This is not going to go on forever, not just water off the edge. I'm thinking it'll be around the middle of my board, and then I'll have unfinished brick promenade on the other side. I think it'll be very pretty to look at. It'll be very wide, quite a wide board, probably close to 2 feet, hopefully not any more than that. Then we go on to these guys, my lead infantry, the Steel Legion. They have great swords, full plate armor. They don't necessarily have a lot of attacks, but if they do hit, they hit very hard. So right now this guy is a standard bearer, but it'll be a pain in the butt to paint if I glue it on like this guy, so I elected not to do that. There are a few other units, and they seem to release a few new models every few months or so. They did a really big drive to get 4 playable factions out as fast as they could over the past 2 years, and it seems they're still expanding on them. The rules are still being updated constantly. Models are being released, both in resin and plastic, like the leaders, they're in resin. This guy, the Noble Lord, is not, though I think there's a resin one coming out eventually, some special edition stuff. Races have towering monsters, but the humans are limited to cavalry. If you're wondering, I did think of selling these casted bases, but I'm not a good resin caster at all. There's just so many bubbles. I think I'm getting better at it, but it's not at the quality where I want to even consider selling them. They're bad, is what I can say right now. I'm eventually getting around to using white resin again instead of clear, so some of the bubbles can actually hide in the opaque plastic, but the bubble situation right now is atrocious. Actually, it's funny, my first casting of these were actually my best, and I think that's pretty sad. After how I was mixing it, pouring in, maybe the humidity has changed. Since I've moved twice when I first cast these, maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe my stirring hand has weakened over time. I don't know. We'll see if I can fix it. It's really cool, you guys should check it out, Parabellum Wargames. Really hoping that this turns out amazing. I think this group right here is a really good proof of concept of what I'm trying to do. Maybe the board will end up too big, but we'll see how it goes. Until next time, we'll try building more stuff. I'm trying to get in bigger games with my friend, and I want more options. So I want a nice 9 block of these guys, or 6 of these guys and 6 of these guys running down the field. I hope you enjoyed the studio update. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks everyone for watching, and hope to see you again.